Fake news, they're everywhere. Coming from Russia, social media, and even the President of America. With UK's internet use surging to record levels during lockdown, according to a recent report from Ofcom, it has become vital to learn what misleading information is, how to recognize it, and ultimately how to fight it. So what is fake news? Under this general term, professors and students at the Nanyang Technological University of Singapore have determined 6 variations: news satire, news parody, propaganda, manipulation, content generated by advertising or PR, and news fabrication. Defining this umbrella term is essential to fight it, according to writer and analyst Nina Jankovic, who studies the intersection of technology and democracy in Central and Eastern Europe and beyond. In her first book, How to Lose the Information War, Russia, Fake News and the Future of Conflict, published early June, she describes some of the motives countries like Russia can have in spreading disinformation and misinformation.
Big misconception about the fact that Russian disinformation and the Russian information warfare strategy in general doesn't really have scruples in terms of politics. You know, we think about Soviet propaganda, that was to build up the image and the politics of the Soviet Union and support for the Soviet Union. Russian disinformation of today is spread out across the political spectrum. Here in the United States, we've seen it support candidates on the left and the right, and any other, configuration thereof, as long as it is pitting us against each other. And the idea isn't to support one political ideology or one political candidate. Again, it is to cause that division, to make us look inward, to cause distraction and dismay, and ultimately to get us to disengage with the democratic process. Democracy requires participation, but when you have this storm of information that you're trying to find your way out of, some people just throw up their hands and say, you know what, I've had enough. And they're not going to go out and ask questions to consume information or to be informed voters. Some of them might not vote at all. And that's the ultimate goal. It's not just to convince you of something that you might not have thought before. In fact, it isn't that at all. It's to play on those pre-existing emotions and predilections that you have and weaponize those in order to get you to stop engaging with the democratic process.
Although there has been much emphasis to control fake news online and elsewhere, disinformation and misinformation are not a new phenomenon, as First Draft News training and support manager Laura Garcia explains.
Human nature means that we've been doing this since forever, right? We just now have a bigger platform to do it on the internet. We share information with our friends and family to try and keep them safe, to try and keep them informed, to try and tell them information that we think is relevant, particularly at times of crises like pandemics or in the run-up to elections. We have emotional reactions to information, and that means that we decide here rather than here what it is that we share with our friends and family. And we take that same approach whenever someone sends us something. If a randomer sends me a story versus my mom sending me a story, I'm 100% more likely to read my mom's story and to consider it because we trust those around us. But that was the same when people went around knocking on each other's doors to have a chat or have a cup of tea 500 years ago versus now, where we do that sharing on closed messaging apps or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. The only difference is now we're doing it on a platform that is accessible from anywhere in the world. There's something called the third party effect, which comes into play and has been researched loads. We all go, oh, he shares fake news. Oh, she shares stuff that isn't real. I don't do it, right? We all think we're resilient and we're protected from this kind of stuff. But even, for example, myself, I work in verification. There's been times when there's something that I see on the internet that is either so funny or speaks to the things that I like or speaks to the things that I hate. It triggers my emotions. And I have shared stuff with friends and family without checking it before that I end up finding out wasn't as accurate as I thought it was. And it's about being aware of those emotional triggers that we have. For example, we think about Twitter and Facebook and all social networks almost like if they were news feeds. But we have to remember that they were meant to be networks to show you things that you and your friends like.
So, could more media literacy win the fight against fake news? That's what the Select Committee on Democracy and Digital Technologies seems to think, as outlined in the recommendations of its new report, Digital Technology and the Resurrection of Trust. A necessity when we know that only 2% of UK children have the critical literacy skills they need to tell if news is real or fake. In London, Shoutout UK has been providing media and political literacy to students and adults. Matteo Bergamini, founder of the social enterprise, welcomes the news and warns of the risks if nothing is done to fight fake news.
Biggest threat to media and political literacy is the biggest threat to our democracy. And I think we are at a really dangerous crossroads at the moment where we've got on one hand people realizing the urgency and the need to combat misinformation. The UN declared an infodemic, for example, quite recently. And people are becoming aware of the importance of being politically literate and understanding how our democracy functions. But at the same time, a lot of people aren't, and a lot of people are very comfortable just receiving information that fits their narrative. Because of the sheer lack of interest or education around media literacy in previous years, pre the pandemic, misinformation has ripped through British society. I mean, you can see it by the fact that we've burnt down 20 phone masts because of the 5G conspiracy. Like, that is the best example you can give about the dangers of having a media illiterate population. As a silver lining, we've had a lot of pickup specifically around media literacy during this period, especially because with our e-portal, we opened it up to parents and individuals. And we had a lot more signups of parents and individuals during this period. Just because I think for parents, they saw how much their kids were online, especially when school was shut, and they wanted something for their kids to not just learn, but also to make them a little bit safer online, because there's only so much you can do to keep your kid or your student safe. The best thing to do is to educate them, to arm them with the tools to then look after themselves in a way.
Unquestionably, media literacy seems to be one of the answers to fight an ever-growing flow of deliberate disinformation. And as seen recently with the Russia report revelations, it might be for the public to take the lead to protect news integrity and democracy. Gaëlle Legrand, South West Londoner.